Hey, Corey Shipe here, doing a quick review on a very cool article that came out by Philip Prince about 2 weeks ago on using Lidar to detect landslides up in Virginia. So let's jump in. In Virginia, we are working in the Valley and Ridge province, which is east of the Blue Ridge, getting over toward the West Virginia border. And the data set was a LiDAR data set, light detection and ranging, 1 meter resolution, and there was a number of outcomes from this data set. The primary one that I'm interested in is landslide detection. So multiple types of landslides were detected. On the bottom right here, you can see one of these slab slide events, which is a term coined by Dr. Prince, and you can see many features of this. It's overall, it's a singular mass that's slumped down slope along a common friction plane that covers the span of the slide. You can see at most we've got maybe even 100 meters or maybe tens of meters of offset, which is a pretty big deal. We've got these features on the edges that are fracture networks. We've got these very complicated toe anticlines forming and tension cracks within them. There's just a lot going on here that we can pick out from this LiDAR data set. That's one example. Another example of one of these slab slides is shown here. We've got this mass that's slumped down slope and buttressed against this feature. Perhaps this is a different lithology, perhaps it's thinner soil. Who knows what's going on in the field? I don't believe that verification's been done yet. It's curious to think about that though, because we likely would not be able to find these features in the field. Again, I mean, look at we've got a very small head scarp that you can pick out that matches up really nicely with the head of this slide. In the field, I would be surprised if we can notice that. Virginia, just like us here in North Carolina, it's very humid, it's very forested. We've got a lot of leaf litter. If you've been in the Appalachians in the fall, you know there are sometimes feet of leaves down on the ground. So being able to identify these features, especially how they fit together, that gives me a little bit of pause to think if we'd even recognize it. So of these landslides that we've detected, one of the limitations is that it's more of an inventory tool than it is a timing tool or a age dating technique. It just kind of tells us what's on the ground today. There are certain items that we may be able to use to give us some indicator of age or timing, and such as channelization across some of these features. So if we've got a channel that cuts across a slide, perhaps that could be helpful. Now, in the future, 2019, it is a great time to be a geoscientist. We've got access to so much good data, but if we could get to where we're doing repeat LiDAR surveys as it continues to get cheaper, continues to get more time and cost effective, that would be fantastic. And that would let us do some real change detection work that could pick up some of these slides. And I've got a keen interest on that in Western North Carolina, which I'll talk about at the end. Here's another example of a more complicated slide. This is something more typical of what we would have here in the Southern Appalachians and the Southern Blue Ridge. This green is the source area. This is perhaps after a large rain event or climatic event that triggered some of these landslides. We had detachment of material that flowed through this area and kind of collected in the bottom of this basin. You can see a river channel going through here. We in that event we blocked off this adjacent channel, and subsequently you've had the hypothesis here is some ponding of sediment. So that's a pretty complicated slide, but it's a good example of what we can pick out with these LiDAR data sets. A very large example here, I'm going to go through this one quickly, but basically we've got roughly a kilometer wide. I mean, this is a very wide slide, very tall. The toe is very complicated. It looks like it's been through many cycles of deformation. Why is this exciting for me? In Western North Carolina and across the Appalachians, we struggle to identify landslides from remote sensing. It's a matter of both the humidity and the forestation that we have. INSAR is difficult to work with given our amount of vegetation. I've tried playing with some of this in Western North Carolina. I have not had much success. It's also a matter of scale. We don't have these 10-kilometer long debris flows that you might have in the western U.S. We've got smaller ones, but they still take lives every single year in Western North Carolina. This is a false color composite of a Sentinel-2 image in Polk County, North Carolina, just a few miles from where I'm recording this video. This occurred in May of 2018. It killed one woman in particular, and subsequently a few others died from trees falling, and it was across the road. It was just a really bad event we had in May of 2018. Here's a aerial image. It was taken by the North Carolina Forest Service, perhaps on the order of a week after the event. So you can see these slides in a actual aerial photo. We can pick them out in the Sentinel-2 imagery, but it is difficult, certainly on a large scale. And additionally, this is exciting because we've got new LiDAR data. In the state of North Carolina, we've got sub-meter data, and we've got data that is even finer if you want to bring a hard drive down to Raleigh and pick it up. What's available today is in the colored areas, and what's coming is in the western part of the state. Any day now that should be published, so very excited. That's my presentation. I am running along, so I'm going to cut it there, but appreciate your attention.